All right, welcome to Training That Works. Today's guest is David McBee. Welcome, David. I'll let you introduce yourself, sir.
All right. Well, my name is David McBee, and I'm a husband, a father of two, big fan of traveling, science fiction, reading, writing, off-roading in my Jeep in the mountains. But I guess for the purposes of today's podcast, I'm also the director of sales, onboarding, and partner education at a company called Simplify, which is an ad tech company. And I've been there for 12 years.
Wow. Wow, that's great. That's great. Well, to dive into the training experiences, can you tell me some of the best trainings you've ever taken personally or trainings that have really stood out to you as, hey, you know what, this one was really good.
Yeah, anytime anyone asks about good training, I go back 100 years back when I was selling print yellow pages. It was the
Okay.
very first time I'd ever gone through a sales training course, and it was like this 2-week crash course away from home. I don't really remember a great deal of what happened during that training. We're learning about UDAC codes and white pages versus yellow pages and things that are completely irrelevant today, right?
Right.
But what really stuck with me was at the end of the 2-week course, you had to do a role play where you called your manager on the phone. I was a telephone sales rep at the time, and you had to sell them. You had to do a full customer needs analysis and sell them. So I had to pitch to my manager, and knowing I had that as like my final exam really helped me prepare for not only understanding what the value of print yellow pages was, but how to discover the gap,
Oh,
the
right.
need. I really sell to a need. And that was huge for me. I was like, I get it now. Sales isn't about what a product does or what's so great about a product. It's about what gap it fills, what need it fulfills. And I have never forgotten that to this day. Everything that I train, I try to talk about what gap it fills and how is a solution instead of a product or service.
Right, right. Well, how did that final presentation go where you had to speak to your boss? Did it go well, or do you remember?
I mean, I don't wanna brag, but I was named valedictorian of my class. I nailed it. It's when I knew I had a future in sales.
Oh, that's awesome. Congrats. That's really cool.
Thanks.
How about on the flip side? Have you had any training experiences that didn't go so well or that you just thought were kind of a massive waste of time?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that actually happens a lot. Like, that happens all the time, in fact.
Right.
I think, you get on this training call, usually it's a Zoom right now in 2025, but it could be in person as well, and somebody's got a PowerPoint deck with a lot of words on it, and they're just reading the words of the PowerPoint deck, and I would pull out my hair if I had any. It's not only is it boring, it could have been emailed to me, right? So it's
Right.
boring and frustrating, and there's no real learning that takes place except for what you can absorb when someone is present. Here's what it comes down to. Most trainings are not trainings, they're presentations, right?
Right.
And the presenter assumes that because they spent 15 minutes, a half hour walking you through a slide deck or even through a user interface, click here, go here, do this, that you've learned something. But the reality is you've really just watched something. And unfortunately, you don't learn unless you get to do some hands on or practice or engage with the trainer, role play, take a quiz, all those things that I just think are missing from so many trainings.
Right, exactly. So what would you say is working in training today? Like what do you do at Simplify or what's your go-to method for training?
Well, it is hard to get together in person these days, as you can imagine. So when we do training at Simplify, we do it mostly virtual. If I need to really, and I think part of it is because there's a bandwidth issue, right? If I could train the way I want to, it'd be more hands on. But the reality is, we do virtual training with quizzes. And then I try to follow up, and we do this with our new hires, right? Well, we'll say, I need you to go watch these 3 videos. And I always tell them, I say, listen, those videos are good. They're full of great information. And I also tackle in every video kind of a so what, who cares moment.
Sure.
I think that is kind of
Mm,
my unique element to my training is like, here's what this product does, here's what the value is to the customer, but here's why you should care. and here's why your client should care, and here's how you take it on a sales pitch, right? So
Okay.
answering so what, who cares is a big part of it.
Hmm.
But with the new hires, we meet every single day. And I tell them the recorded trainings are very good. I'm very proud of them, but they can't listen. They can't answer questions. They can't even have a conversation with you. They can't talk back. And maybe there'll be a way that I can create an AI version of myself one day and stick it
Right.
into the training, right? But at this point, it's like come to this engagement call every single day so that we can have those three elements be added to the virtual training that you're taking. And every single new seller that I work with goes through a role play exercise. It's classic, it's old school, but I don't think there's anything that prepares a seller better than role playing. And what we do is we do some like timeout, and like let's pause for a moment, let's review what you just did. And I've seen, I consider this more coaching, honestly, than
Okay.
training when it's one on one like that. What I've seen a lot of people do is they'll just tell the person what they did wrong, or maybe they'll tell the person what they could have done better, right?
Okay.
And I've done that too. I'm guilty of it, but when I'm at my best, I ask questions of the trainee to try and get them to discover that on their own. Questions like, all right, so based on what you just told me, imagine I'm the buyer. Do I really have a clear understanding of what you just said? And if not, how could you have said it in a way that would be more understandable on my point, from my point of view, right?
Right.
Or I'll say, what did you do great right there? Like, tell me why you said that and why it's so great. And I'll have them analyze their own work right there. Like, time out, let's analyze what you did. And I ask them to do the analysis so that they can come to the conclusion on their own of what they did well or what they could improve upon.
Right. So they're not being told, here's what you should do. They're then figuring it out, processing it in their own brain. Well, here's the point. Here's where, that
I mean, to
makes
be
such
fair,
a
there is some of that where they don't understand what they did wrong or could have done better, and I have to tell them. Certainly that happens.
right.
But when they can come to the conclusion on their own, I think that the learning is more impactful.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So if you were running everything at your company and they said, all right, we're going to have you do any training you want anytime, what would you different? How would you train? What would you implement? And budget's no option here. So I know budgets are always a big deal. They said no budget. David, we want you to run with this. What would you do? What would that look like?
Well, I would say right now, most, and here's the difference. I'm going to say it again. Training is when you train a group of people. Coaching is when you're one on one. That's my definition as I'm seeing it. So if I could flip the script instead of it being 90% training and 10% coaching, I would probably flip it and
Hmm.
make it 10% training and 90% coaching. Now, of course, that would require a whole lot more trainers, a whole lot bigger budgets, more time. But if you think about it, okay, here's an analogy. My daughter played club softball all through her teen years, right? And if you've ever had a child in sports, you know there's a lot of practices.
Right.
And that's where the whole team gets together and they practice. But the girls who were really amazing, the really good pitchers, the really good hitters and fielders, and this is humble brag, my daughter was a great hitter. It was because of those private lessons, you know?
Sure.
And it can be expensive and more time consuming, but in that one-on-one time period where she's just working one-on-one with a coach to teach her how to improve her swing, how to hit the ball right up the center, or how to slap hit or bunt or whatever it is. She learns so much more and was so much better at the game than if you had just attended practice, right?
Okay.
And so in the professional world, we invite our teams to come to the practice and here's the training, and we put the training out in front of everybody. But what we don't do enough of is that one-on-one coaching. And
Okay.
to your point, it's a bandwidth issue, it's a budget issue, it's a time issue. But if I had the keys to the kingdom, that would be the main thing that I would probably do.
Oh, I love that. I actually haven't heard that before. So I think that's a great insight. And I think that would make a huge difference because that personal coaching really does make a huge difference. And it holds people accountable too, because you can say, hey, are you doing what you said you were going to be doing? So
It
Takes
also
them through
gives you the ability to tell if the learning is taking place, right? Because in a 1 to 20 group, you can't really tell if that one person in the corner is just being quiet. Like, did they get it? Yes, they passed the quiz, but are they really going to be successful? But when you're one-on-one, you like, oh, you don't get this. All
Right.
right, I need to shift something in the way that I teach you so that you get it, right?
Right.
Now, that's a dream where there'd be lots and lots of coaches,
Sure.
instead of a couple of trainers. But I think in 2025 there is a potential solution that people could implement. And I'm speaking, of course, as a sales trainer. So when I first started out as a sales trainer, I would record all of my presentations and I would review them and I'd be like, that stunk. I could have done better there. Or, ooh, I like that joke. I'm going to put that joke in from now on. Right.
Right.
And I think that, you know, that's not in a regular way to improve yourself. I think every Monday morning, football teams sit down and watch the game tapes. Right.
Exactly.
So in 2025, a salesperson, in my opinion, should be recording every single one of their sales calls.
Mm.
Now, they would need the other person's permission to do so, right? But I think it's kind of almost becoming common practice. You're in a Zoom, the record button's on. You're like, I'm just going to use this to take notes or whatever. And people are fine with it.
Right.
So picture this. You record every single pitch. You get the transcript of that pitch. And then you upload that transcript into AI and you ask it to
Mm.
analyze it and tell you what you could have done better or what you did poorly or give you ideas on how to improve in one way or another. Now, I'm not trying to put myself or other trainers out of a job, but
Right.
but AI can absolutely analyze that call and be like, well, you really didn't tie this part of the call back to selling to a need. You can even say, act as if you are, and I do this a lot. I love the book called Gap Selling
Okay.
by Keenan.
Okay.
And so I'll say, act as if you are Keenan, the author of Gap Selling, and analyze this pitch and tell me how I could have done better. And the results that come back are so fantastic. It's
Oh,
like having, a virtual version of Keenan there
they
to help my learners learn and grow.
Right. Yeah, I do the same thing. I often do it with Alex Hermosi. Just say, all right, if Alex Hermosi was reviewing what I just did, what would his response be? And they're very straightforward. So, oh, yeah, great, great. So, what you mentioned a book there. Do you have any books besides that one that you recommend that have been big for you, or whether in the business world or the training world? Either way, I love it when someone has a book that, hey, this one really impacted me.
Well, I'm gonna go really old school on you right now, but the book that made all the difference for me back when I was a young seller was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale
Oh,
Carnegie.
sure.
And I
Fantastic.
continue to promote that book and bring it up because unfortunately, no one else is talking about that book in 2025 except for the old goats like me, right? And so I want younger sellers. It's not even just for sellers, it's for anyone who wants to improve their communication skills, right? I
Right.
want the younger generation to pick up that book and have it have the impact on them that it had on me. So I'm absolute
Hmm.
huge advocate for that particular book
Oh.
for anything related to business.
Oh, I like that. Thank you. I haven't read that in 20 years, so that's a kind of a motivation to go back and reread it.
That's funny that you say that. It is absolutely worth rereading, isn't it? And for many years, I read it every January. Like,
Really?
January would come around, I'd be like, "Oh, I gotta read How to Win Friends and Influence People again." And then, like, after 6 years, like, I had the book memorized and I kinda stopped.
Right.
Hey, it's a good reminder for me to go back and pick it up again
Sure.
as well because it's just timeless. Now, obviously, the examples written in the fees are a little out of date, and they have a new version of it with more up to date examples, and it talks about social media and things like that. So if the old school one is too old, there's a newer version.
Right, right. Have you ever heard of I heard this on a podcast once where they read a book, the one that they really love that they're going to reread. They highlight it with one color highlighter, and then the next year, like you said, you reread it the next year, they highlight the things that stood out that are new for them the next year in a different color highlighter. So after they've read it like 4 or 5 times, they can see, all right, this year, all these things really were important to me. And then, the following years, it's just a nice progression of how things, how you learn or what's important to you at that time. So,
That's very interesting. I like that concept. If
yeah.
only there was a way to highlight an audiobook in that way.
Oh,
I just,
oh, I know.
that's how I read most of my books. On Sunday mornings, I'll sit down and read and highlight in another book that's unrelated to this, but most of the time it's audiobooks on the treadmill.
Right, right. For me too, audiobooks are my main source. So, all right, and then on to probably the last question here. What drives you? What drives you personally to work as hard as you do? And if you need a
Huh.
moment to think about it, I can give you the background on the why I'm asking, and if you're
Yeah, tell me
interested,
why
just
you're
because like
asking. I like that.
growing up, I had to work. We grew up on a dairy farm, so I had to work. There was no choice. My dad said, "Hey, you need to get up at this time, 4:30 in the morning, and start work." And it was never a choice. So for my children, I want to be able to teach that hard work ethic because I have that, but it's very different. As you know, in this world, it's so much different. And so I'm always curious as to what drives people and how they, teach their children or others in their group or in their organization. How do you teach them to work hard? Obviously, modeling it is a big one, but I'm wondering if you had any insights of what drives you and how you teach that hard work ethic.
It's a good question. I'm not entirely sure I'll be able to answer it as effectively as I probably should, because I think I've just always been incredibly motivated. I got my very first B in the 6th grade, and it was in PE.
Okay.
And as a 6th grader, I was furious.
No
Now,
way. Okay.
yeah, I went to the gym teacher and I was like, "What is this? It's my only B. Can you change it? What can I do?" Right? And it wasn't because my parents were like, "You got to get straight A's," because they never were like that.
Right.
But I just felt compelled to always be the best at whatever I was trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And as I got older, I mean, yes, I got straight A's all through high school and mostly through college. And then that just extended into my work life. Anytime I went to work, I just wanted to be the very best at whatever I was doing. And I think it comes down to looking in the mirror and just knowing you're being the best version of yourself that you can be.
Right.
Right? And I don't wanna ever look in the mirror and go, "You kinda half-assed that," "You didn't give it your all." I don't care for people like that, and I don't wanna be that kind of person. My dad always worked hard. My mom worked hard. She was like a great, amazing stay-at-home mom that took her job very, very seriously, and, maybe they modeled the proper behavior for me. And now that my kids are older, my 19-year-old daughter, she's amazing. My 24-year-old son just bought a house, like,
That's all.
parent win, right? And
Right.
I think, maybe it is modeling. Maybe that's what it all comes down to. My parents modeled real well for me. I'm modeling for them, and hopefully they will for my grandkids.
Okay. Is there anything you do in the organization side of things and training? Anything you do to motivate people to work harder if you're seeing them not work hard, or is that not really an area you touch a whole lot?
Yeah, I wish I had more time and energy for that. It's not really part of my mandate. I think their managers are more in charge of that particular aspect of their careers. But again, I think modeling for them as well, if I want them to read, I have to read. If I
Yeah.
want them to post on social media, I have to post on social media.
Right.
If I want them to take my training, I have to take trainings. So maybe it all comes back to modeling for that as well.
Sounds good. Well, before I ask your final question here, I wanted to bring this up. This is a book that you wrote. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's my children's book. It's called DJ's Off-Road Adventures. It's based on a true story. I said it in my introduction. I love to take my Jeep all over the country into the mountains. It wasn't always that way. The very first trip I went on, I was with some more experienced off-road enthusiasts, and they took me to places that I didn't even realize existed, and it was very, very scary. I had a panic attack on the side of this cliff, and they were just so kind and patient with me and helped me kinda overcome that fear, and it was the most when you overcome a fear, it's much more exciting than if you hadn't had the fear to begin with,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
absolutely. Mhm.
And so now I just challenge myself, and I just love going off-road, but I would tell people that story. about my panic attack and about the friendship that the off-road community brought along. And somebody said, "Well, that sounds like a great children's book." And I was like, "Yeah, it does." And that just kind of stuck. And I decided to, storyboard it, find an illustrator, find a publisher. And now I have 4 books that are for of the DJ's Off-Road Adventure series, plus a couple
Fantastic.
of books I've written for adults too. So part of my journey that I really didn't expect to take place in my late 40s, early 50s, but something I'm really proud of. So thanks for bringing that up. I
Hey, no
appreciate that.
problem. That is fantastic. And I did read the book. It is actually very well done. Excellent. The illustrations are amazing. And I even bookmarked my favorite page in the book. So definitely check out a copy of it. So where can people find you? And any final thoughts?
Pretty easy to find because I've been in digital marketing for a very long time. Google search for David McBee, MCBEE, should reveal me and all my websites pretty easily. Or you can just go to davidmcbee.com, and then there's a button in the top corner that says Everything David, and it's all my social media for the books, for the training, everything. So
Oh,
pretty
that's
easy to find.
awesome. Yeah, it makes it very easy to find you. That's great. Well, thank you very much for joining the Training That Works podcast. It was an honor to have you here, David, and thank you.
It was an honor to be your guest, Rustin. Thank you so much.